morning. I'm John Fasana. I'm the board chair of LA Metro, and I'd like to welcome you today to the Foothill project, state of the project for the Foothill Gold Line in 2016. So this session today is called Getting to the Finish Line. The Gold Line to Montclair has moved into the design phase, and you're going to receive an update today on exactly where we are with that. And our panelists today are Habib Balian. He's the CEO of the Foothill Gold Line. He has been overseeing the planning, funding, and construction of this line to Montclair. And during his 16 years with the agency, he has been involved with the extension to Pasadena initially, but also as the CEO as we moved into construction of Phase 2A, which opened this year in March 2016. But we all know that the Foothill Gold Line is not finished. There's still more to be done. The finish line, let's just say the interim finish line is in Montclair. We still have another step that we need to take. Also with us today will be Stephanie Wiggins. She's the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of LA Metro. She has more than 20 years of experience in transportation planning with agencies. She currently serves as the Deputy CEO at the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transportation Authority. She has past experience as well with the Riverside County Transportation Commission, where she oversaw transit, commuter rail, and rideshare and goods movement. So she's a member of the Transportation Research Board, the Congestion Pricing Committee. She introduced congestion pricing to Los Angeles County. People thought it would never be done. She did it. And with TRB Research and Technology Coordinating Committee, she serves as the WTS, Women in Transportation, Los Angeles Chapter Board member. And we also have today with us Chris Berner, who's the Chief Project Officer with the Foothill Gold Line. He's kept the project online and moving forward, and certainly did so with Phase 2A. He was appointed Chief Project Officer in 2006, providing overall executive direction to the authority. During his tenure, he's overseen the planning, design, and construction of the 11.5-mile, 6-mile extension from Sierra Madreville and Pasadena to Azusa, which was completed on time and on budget, and as we mentioned, opened in 2016, earlier this year. And he's currently overseeing the 12.3-mile next phase, Glendora to Montclair, which takes us closer to Ontario Airport. He is a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers and a former officer in the United States Air Force, but right now trains are his preferred mode of transit. So at this time, we're going to introduce this panel. It will begin with a discussion by Chris and Habib talking about the project, how it's moving forward, and then Stephanie will present in terms of Metro's funding plan. Both elements are critical to moving this project forward. So Habib, I'll turn it over to you first.
Thank you, John, and good morning. I believe we're going to start with a quick video, is that right?
We're watching the future today. That's right, today is happening now. We are taking a trip back in time, discovering the mysteries and wonders of the fantastic Los Angeles to Pasadena Metro Gold Line. It all started over 100 years ago. Before the turn of the century, Los Angeles was a vast, arid piece of land with a population of around 2,000. From the first street in Los Angeles, Olvera Street, the city was expanding rapidly because there were forces at work here turning this harsh environment into a desirable and thriving metropolis. The horse and buggy couldn't keep up with the demand of the growing population. The Wild West was over, and the need for mass transit was now. The time had come to get serious about mass transportation in the Southland, and one man had that vision. Henry E. Huntington came to California at the turn of the century with one purpose in mind: to build a transportation empire. He single-handedly bought up all the independent trolley companies, then consolidated them into the Pacific Electric Railroad, which, in the system's peak, packed a walloping 1,164 miles of track, making it the world's largest electrical mass transit system. Ridership wasn't exclusive to the PE. Among the most glamorous trains of yesteryear were Santa Fe's Chief and El Capitan. running from Los Angeles through Pasadena, then to San Bernardino, riding on the beautiful Pasadena subdivision. By the end of the 40s, the love affair with traction was waning. People were driving cars, and many right-of-ways were being bought up by the Big Three. The PE service slowed, and the declining patronage sealed the fate of the interurbans. By the 50s, the automobile was king of the highway, and electrical mass transit was no longer.
Might be a little difficult right now on the 405
freeway northbound in Dyer. Earlier accident cleared, still slow from MacArthur to Dyer.
Baker, we have an injury crash here on the right shoulder.
Left lane.
Originally, it was envisioned that the Blue Line would run all the way from Long Beach to Pasadena, but it was realized that an underground connecting terminal under Union Station would be too expensive to construct. So, to make people understand they had to change trains at Union Station, the Pasadena portion was changed from the Blue Line to the Gold Line. In late 2000, the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments and the LA to Pasadena Construction Authority decided to pursue this continuation of the Gold Line east to Claremont, and will work together as a team to bring this project to reality. Phase 2 of the system will play a huge role in redistributing growth and strengthening established downtowns in the foothill communities throughout the San Gabriel Valley. Light rail transportation has come a long way over the years. The Los Angeles to Pasadena Authority has proven that such systems can be efficiently built to keep people moving along, to help reduce congestion, and to make commuters happy people. I'm Roger Steffens. Thanks for watching.
So are commuters happy people? What do you think? That was a piece that we produced at the Construction Authority in 2003 when we opened the project to the public. And we're very proud of that because it tells a fun history of the project and where we were. And today we're going to talk about how we're going to get to that future. So I'm pleased that you're all here to join me. Give me an opportunity to remind you a little bit about the Construction Authority. We are a separate sole purpose entity that was created by the state. Then State Senator Adam Schiff saw the project wasn't getting built, so with the help of the city of Pasadena, South Pasadena, and Los Angeles, they came together and through Sacramento crafted a separate authority that was going to build this project. I was taken away from Metro, and we were to build a project under our own steam with all the rights and responsibilities that were necessary to allow us to build the project that Metro would ultimately inherit. We built it to their design spec because they're going to have to operate the system well into the future. This project is being built in 3 segments, as you know. The successful opening in 2003 from Los Angeles to Pasadena, on time and on budget. And then, of course, to Azusa just this past March, once again on time and on budget. And Glendora to Montclair is the next segment that we're going to be building. Total about 38 miles, almost $3 billion worth of construction that this project will be in the ultimate build-out condition. This phase of the project, Glendora to Montclair, has many major project elements that have been identified, and they're all part of the existing system, Phase 1 and Phase 2 from Pasadena to Azusa. 12.3 miles of a light rail track. It's all within generally our existing railroad right-of-way that Metro purchased back in the 80s. And then it's a shared corridor the entire length of the project from Azusa all the way to Montclair. There will be BNSF, Metrolink, as well as 2 tracks for the light rail. And Chris is going to talk a little bit about that aspect of the project in a moment. And then, of course, this is overhead catenary system that you've seen. It's particular to light rail, and you've seen it on the existing system and any other light rail system that you would tour anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. And then, of course, we have a station in each of the 6 cities along the way. We've gone through this process with the cities where they understand exactly where we're going. There should be no surprises with these cities, or if they are, they're just acting surprised if they come up with anything at this point in this process, and we are going to talk a little bit about that. But this project has all the same things that you would see as in Phase 1 of the project. We have a very high quality standard, safety standard for that project. We have 24 at-grade street-level crossings. We have 11 traction power substations, one every mile, mile and a half along the alignment. And then there's also flyover structures that move the freight from one side of the track to the other so that they can make their deliveries along with this project being constructed. And then we have a series of new grade separations along the way that are listed here in these cities. We also have parking. Parking is a big part of this project. We have about 4 times as much parking in this phase of the project than we did in the earlier phase. A lot of folks have asked why more parking there and not in this phase that's under construction. If you haven't heard or read about it, but all of our parking lots are overflowing in this phase that just opened in March. And from our analysis, we found that there's just more people from the east that are coming in that are willing to drive to our stations and get off that freeway. We thought folks, when they came that far to the west, they would just say, well, heck, I've come this far, I'm just going to keep going in my car. But that's not what's happening. They're so disgruntled out there in traffic that they're getting out of their cars all along the route and filling up those parking garages. So we're really looking to the cities and to Metro and to come up with ways of increasing shuttle service to all of these stations and parking, because ultimately we just can't keep building parking lots. There's higher and better use for this land than just building parking. With regard to readiness, we talk about readiness. There's a lot of discussion about Measure R and what's going to happen and why do these projects take so long. We want folks to understand that we are a ready project. And with that mean we started in 2003. Once phase 1 of the project was completed, we went right into the planning phase for 2004, that looked at the project all the way from Pasadena to the county line. We created a project definition report in 2005. And then by 2007, we had identified the station artists, where the stations were going to go, met with the cities, coordinated a process working with the staff. So again, they wouldn't be surprised with what we're building, and this would be something that was going to fit within the city plans long term, because we know these projects take some time to build. Then in 2010, the DEIR process began. We worked with all of the cities along the way, the entire way from Glendora to Montclair. And then final approval in 2013, March of 2013, that was adopted. A locally preferred alternative was identified and adopted by the Construction Authority Board. And then we're back in 2014 where we have advanced conceptual engineering underway for the last 2 years, to the point where our Construction Authority Board just last week approved the advanced conceptual engineering document. That this is really the first big step that we have, that we can actually go into procurement, we can identify the project well enough that we can get a hard bid from a contractor. I'm going to turn the next piece of this presentation over to Chris Berner. Chris is going to talk about the advanced conceptual engineering. He's going to wave around a document that weighs, I don't know, what do you say, Chris? 30 pounds? About 30, 50 pounds, and represents about $15 million worth of effort over the last 2 years. That tells us exactly how this project is defined and how it will impact the cities and how the cities can plan for it. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Habib, and good morning, everyone. On this project, we're using the design-build methodology, so we're not going to advance the design to 100% prior to building the project. So what we do is we create a set of drawings. We call them the advanced conceptual engineering drawings. They're at some level less than 100%, and they are intended to show the general configuration of the project. They're there to help us develop the scope of the project, and they really help us identify any significant issues that are associated with the project, so we can resolve those issues prior to awarding a design-build contract. The idea is to get any of those significant issues resolved and out of the way prior to awarding a design-build contract, so the project can move along as efficiently as possible. As Habib said, we have completed a draft set of the advanced conceptual engineering. They're right there on the table, of approximately 700 sheets of drawings. We have provided those to the 6 corridor cities, to Sandbag, to Metro, and to Metrolink for them to review. Those are our primary stakeholders on the project, for them to review and provide comment back to us. Once we receive those comments, we will address their comments, incorporate changes into the set of drawings, and we will release one more set of drawings in the spring of 2017, and allow one final review of those drawings by those same stakeholders. This is a preview of the stations. I have a site plan for each of the 6 stations on the project. We'll show you. Those are the primary interfaces with the public. This is the first station heading west to east. This is the Glendora station. The station is in orange color there. It's between Vermont and Glendora Avenues. The yellow indicates pedestrian circulation paths. And the parking structure, it's a 420 space parking structure that is located just to the south of that station. This is a snapshot of what it looks like currently today. And this is a relatively simple simulation of what the station will look like at some point in time in the future. This is the site plan for the future San Dimas station. It is just to the east of San Dimas Avenue. Once again, it's depicted in orange. The yellow lines are pedestrian circulation routes. The parking structure is just to the east of the station. We are in the process of finalizing the exact location of that parking structure. We are considering an option to what was cleared in the environmental document. This is a picture of it today and what we expect it to look like in the future. This is the Laverne site plan. Once again, the station is in orange there, just to the east of E Street and north of Arrow Highway. There is a 600 space parking structure there. The yellow indicates the pedestrian circulation routes. There's a kiss and ride facility there and a promenade that will allow people being dropped off by their cars. There's a bus stop there to access the station. There it is in the current configuration today, and that's what it will look like in the future. This is the Pomona station. It is located just to the west of Gary Avenue and north of Santa Fe Street. This is the first station that has an interface with the Metrolink station. The Metrolink station is just to the south and slightly to the west of the station. The yellow shows the pedestrian circulation. There will be good circulation between the Metrolink and the Metro station, as well as to Gary Avenue to the north, to the south. There will be very good connections for all of that. All of the users. You can use either the parking lot, the existing parking lots, or the new parking structure that we're going to build to access either of the stations. There's the present condition, and that's a depiction of what it'll look like in the future. The next station, and the final one in Los Angeles County, is the Claremont station. It also has an interface with the Metrolink station. We are going to have to relocate the existing Metrolink station there. You can see the light rail station is in orange, and that is where the existing Metrolink station is in Claremont. We are going to move it to the east side of College, and you can see it depicted in the black hatching and on the extreme right side of that site plan. There will be a 1,200 space parking structure located where the surface parking lot is right now, and there will be good access to the Claremont Village and to the colleges and to the parking facility. There's a picture there today. That's the Metrolink station, and our station will be located in that location. Our final station, and this one is in San Bernardino County, is the Montclair station at the existing Trans Center. We are going to have to acquire some, we are going to have to displace some parking on the southern part of that existing parking lot. There's an existing 1,600 space parking lot. And we will have to find some replacement parking for that displaced parking. And that is located kind of in the center of that site plan. The Metro Gold Line station is in orange. The existing MetroLink platform is just to the south of that. And you can see with the yellow lines, there are connections between the two platforms and to the existing parking lot. There's where the station is going to be, and that's what it will look like in the future. There are some differences that we are planning into the Glendora to Montclair segment from as compared to what we did on the Pasadena to Azusa line. There are, as Habib mentioned, there are approximately 4 times the parking on this line. Each station will have there'll be center platforms. On the previous phase, we did have a mix 50-50 of center platforms and side platform. Centers are better for metro operations and for it's much less confusing for the patrons. We are going to have a public entrance on both sides of all of our stations. We only had one of those on our previous project. And since we have 2 entrances on each of the stations, the PUC has requested that we add some pedestrian overcrossings and undercrossings to access from the parking facility to the station so that you're not crossing the tracks at grade. We also are required to add fare gates. Metro has changed their policy since we began the Pasadena to Azusa segment, and so we are required now to add fare gates to each of the platforms. This is a challenging project. It's much more challenging than the Pasadena to Azusa segment. The first challenge is we still need funding for the construction of it, and obviously that is, if we don't get over that challenge, then there will be difficulty in building the project. But we require a little over $1.15 billion to build the LA portion of the project, and approximately $63 million to build the San Bernardino portion of it. From a technical standpoint, the most challenging part of the project is the relocation of the existing tracks that service BNSF and MetroLink. Those tracks are in the middle of the right-of-way, and there's just not enough room on either side for us to place our light rail tracks. So we have to essentially reconstruct the entire existing tracks to one side or the other of our right-of-way to make room for our light rail tracks. So essentially, it's 2 projects in one. The first project will be relocating the existing tracks, clearing the way for the light rail tracks, and then building the light rail project, the tracks and the stations and everything. So because of this 2 projects in one and not being able to build both simultaneously, we are looking at extended construction duration for this project. We're still evaluating the schedule to determine the exact duration of the project, but it is looking that it will be an extended project. We also have to relocate the Claremont MetroLink station. Doing so, we also have the requirement of relocating all the tracks and the station while maintaining the existing operations. So that is a large challenge for us. We are working on a construction phasing plan to determine how we're going to do that, but we will be able to do it. There are also numerous at-grade crossings on the project. Those are time-consuming to construct, and there are a lot of interfaces with the general public and traffic. There are 24 new or renovated structures, bridges on the project, and there's a large number of what we call third parties. They're essentially the project stakeholders. There are 6 corridor cities, there's 2 counties, We have to work with Metrolink, Metro, Caltrans, Sandbag, probably 10 or 15 utilities, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So there's a significant amount of coordination that we have to do in working with those project stakeholders. I think at this point I'm going to turn it back over to Habib to finish up the presentation and talk about our procurement schedule.
So where do we go from here? It's really about executing the procurement of this project in a timely way with all the information that we've gathered over the last 2.5 years. Chris talked about advanced conceptual engineering. We have our partner at Metro with the design specifications and the requirements for this project. And with those documents together, it's probably this high across the top of that table, the designers and builders will bid on this project. And I have laid out here a schedule that will allow us to take the advanced conceptual engineering at this point and put it into a design-build package. This is likely going to be 2 large design-build packages, but the first one we'd be ready to launch next year, and then the second one we'd be able to launch in 2018. We see this, as Chris mentioned, as a lengthy project. Probably Chris will have no hair by the time this project comes, but this is something that's going to be very intensive over the next few years with the critical nature of some of this coordination that's going to need to take place. But none of this is going to be possible without the funding. Right now, we have in our schedule the funding coming through in 2017 from Metro. Metro's plan calls for funding to come through in 2019, a couple years later. So we have to work out that issue. We've decided amongst family to argue about that after the measure is passed in November. And we'll quibble over those things, but there's a lot of coordination work that has to be done in the meantime, and we're anxious to see the measure pass. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Habib and Chris. Obviously, the table is set for us to move toward the finish line. Now, in days past, we know that at times Metro looked at planning as a zero-sum game. Other areas would get the sum and we'd get the zero. But those days have changed substantially, and we have a real partnership now at this point moving forward. The opportunity is at hand to get this line built, and I think what you're going to hear from Stephanie is a very aggressive funding plan which is very favorable to this region, but also favorable to the entire county of linking this county together. So we have an opportunity at hand. It beats Habib singing a hymn and me passing a hat, but it is a path to get the dollars that we need. And I just want to point out again that through Phase 2A, there is an extremely cooperative relationship between Metro and the Foothill Extension in getting this line built. And that partnership has continued through the development of the plan that Stephanie is going to describe at this time. So Stephanie, please come forward.
I think I have a short video as well.
Good morning. I'm really excited to be here. That's a fun little social media video. We've got 3 such videos in alignment with us opening Section 2A of the Gold Line. And I'm excited to be here because it is a spectacular opportunity to pause and take a look at the state of the Gold Line, because it has been a fantastic partnership with the Foothill Gold Line Authority. I would be remiss on behalf of our CEO, Phil Washington, not to also acknowledge how he appreciates the leadership and vision that Habib has brought to the partnership. And it is exciting because the competency and the ability that Foothill Gold Line Authority has shown has really been a model, not just for other future corridors, lines, and cities across the county, but also for Metro itself. So I want to acknowledge Habib. Thank you very much. As our Metro Board Chair, John Fasana mentioned, what's critical to be an active partner with the Foothill Gold Line Authority in advancing their project is really what is our funding plan. And as many of you know, the cornerstone of a Metro funding plan is our long-range plan. So I'm going to take a few moments to talk about the keyest element of our long-range plan, if you will, which is Measure M, and talk about how this expenditure plan has been developed and what it could mean for this region as well as the project. Our long-range plan usually looks out about 30 years. It is our roadmap on how we look at improving mobility throughout the county. We look at providing alternative travel choices, whether it be light rail, like the Gold Line, bus rapid transit. We also look at freeway improvements. We also work with our municipal transit operators, whether it be Foothill Transit in San Gabriel Valley, as well as some of our city municipal operators. But we're really looking at providing all types of choices other than for folks so they know that they don't just have to resort to traveling alone in their vehicle. And over the last 3 years, we've been working on updating that long-range plan. And you know, I delivered some improvements so far. All of you know about the excess of Section 2A on the Gold Line, which we opened in March of this year. In May of this year, we opened an extension into Santa Monica from Culver City. And we're continuing to deliver on improvements in our long-range plan. The challenge, though, is that in Los Angeles County, traffic is still an issue. And it's one that all of us know. How many people grew up in Los Angeles County? Anybody? Okay, good, a fair number. How many of us did not grow up here? Okay, we're the problem, right? Because people keep coming. People keep coming. Millions and millions of people keep coming to Los Angeles County because we know we have great weather. We have great institutions. Thank you for hosting us at Claremont Colleges. And we have great jobs. And we've got 10 million and growing. And more than 2 million are expected to come to this county over the next couple of decades. So this is a place like no other on earth, and we need to do more and be more aggressive, as our chairman said, about providing mobility options. And we do this, Metro, does not do this alone. We do this in partnership with the cities. You know there are 88 cities here in Los Angeles County. We have the shared goal of moving people where they want to be and where they want to go. We cannot do this alone, and so we value the partnership that we have with our cities as well. This long-range plan update process has been collaborative. We've identified a need for additional funding, known as Measure M. This has been a process where we largely worked with our Council of Governments. We work closely with Phil Hockey of the San Gabriel Valley COG, as well as the other COG executive directors and their leadership on developing a plan and having an open dialogue. During this process in developing our plan, we had a significant amount of public engagement. We had public meetings, we've had telephone town halls, we've gotten over 1,500 comments from the public about what they would like to see, what they would imagine in terms of improving mobility across LA County. Now, many of you know what Measure M is. It's a measure to improve freeway traffic flow and safety, to repair our potholes and our sidewalks, to repave our local streets, and we want to expand our rail and bus network, and we want to keep senior, disabled, and student fares low and create jobs. But in point of fact, Measure M aims to give people back their most valuable resource, and that's their time. All of us Angelenos deserve time back in their day. County residents already lose on average 80 hours a year stuck in traffic. That's a paycheck for most of us, right? 80 hours. With Measure M, we can cut that time lost substantially by improving our roadways and giving people options for mobility. It also gives people ability for people to move around, find economic opportunity, and live their best life. So what our board did in June of this year is they approved placing a no sunset measure on the November ballot on November 8th. And it is a new half-cent sales tax that would start in July 2017, just in time for Habib's timeline. And it would increase to a full cent in 2039 when our current Measure R expires. And it would continue until voters decide to repeal it. And this measure needs a 2/3 vote to approve it. The financial impact of the measure, on average, is about 5 cents on a $10 purchase, or what's been estimated for us is about $24 per person on an average year, based upon their spending. So let me briefly go over the elements, the key elements of the measure. First, we have, again, what is our core mission, and that's bus and rail operations at Metro. During the first 40 years of the measure, it's expected to generate almost $30 billion. Funds for these would also be made available to our San Gabriel Valley bus operators like Foothill Transit and others. We also have funding, just like we have in Measure R, for regional rail or Metrolink. We have new, in this measure, decided to set aside funding for what we call state of good repair. We've been fortunate to learn as a major transit agency from others, whether they be on the East Coast in DC or New York or just in Northern California in the Bay Area, where we've seen what happens with the older aging infrastructure, and really there's a lot of deferred maintenance that goes on. What we want to do is we want to learn from those lessons and actually provide a small amount of funding that's dedicated for preventative maintenance, so we can ensure that we keep our system in a good state of repair. What does that mean for our riders? It means we can continue to attract riders and not lose riders, because what we're seeing right now is on our blue line, there's been disruption to service. It actually negatively impacts ridership. So building upon lessons learned, we've elected to add this new category of funding. The second new category of funding for the measure is focused on our most vulnerable populations, our students, our disabled community population, as well as our seniors. We've designed Measure M to ensure that these populations are taken care of. That's our promise to our students that will help them out as they seek to better themselves, and a promise to our seniors that their age will not be a limiting factor to their mobility. Our senior population is the fastest growing population in LA County. We also have created another new category for bike and pedestrian connections to our transit service. It was surprising to us when we recently completed a survey for our quality of life assessment and determined about 80% of our bus riders walk or bike to our transit stops, and about 70% walk or bicycle to our rail transit stops. It's also important to note that transit-dependent populations tend to be high pedestrian and bicycle users. So for the first time in Metro's history, we're proposing to also dedicate a funding slice for bike and pedestrian connections to transit. This is separate and apart from what we all know as local return. Again, I mentioned how important our partnership is with the cities and really being able to carry out our vision on improving mobility for all of LA County residents. Local return dollars are a critical kind of cornerstone of our sales tax measures. They have been in the past, and they are also present with Measure M. One of the feedback points that we've been hearing about local return is the need for cities to have more. One of the points we want to acknowledge is that in receiving that feedback, our proposal is actually to increase the amount of local return in this measure than exists in Measure R today. We are proposing 17%, starting out with this measure as opposed to 15% in Measure R, and then it would increase to 20% in 2039 when Measure R expires. And we think of these funds as very important. It's a shot in the arm kind of for funding for cities. For San Gabriel Valley alone, it's about $4 billion over the first 40 years of the measure. It's really important to provide this local return for cities. The cities know best how to deliver within their neighborhoods and what their community needs. And we've attempted to make this local return funding very flexible for the cities, and we've also added eligibility for Green Street improvements for these funds. But the most talked about element of our measure are the capital projects. Hence, our State of the Project Conference. Across the county, many residents are concerned and interested in what are the major projects and what will it mean to them. We have proposed, again, with this bottoms-up collaborative process, major projects throughout the county, whether they be transit major projects or highway major projects. And the goal is really to get people where they need to go, whether it's for work, school, or enjoyment. One of the major impacts of Measure M are the jobs that are going to be created. LAEDC, Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation, did an independent assessment on just the major capital projects that were in that map, and have identified almost 500,000 jobs that would be created, direct and indirect jobs. Generating almost $80 billion in economic output. That means this could be a local economic stimulus if this were to pass. There are 40 major highway and transit projects in the first 40 years, and some projects will be completed in later years. And that has been kind of the elephant in the room in terms of, is it fair that some major projects advance faster than others? Well, I can tell you that, again, Gold Line is a perfect example. Being shovel-ready, really, with the Foothill Authority taking the initiative to start the environmental process, advance the engineering, to be ready if a new funding source becomes available is really key, and it's a best practice. And that's why the Foothill Gold Line project, as well as other major projects, have been identified by our CEO in our Operation Shovel Ready program for just that purpose. Our challenge in trying to prioritize projects is that we all would like our project done first. But we don't live in a perfect world, and through this kind of 3-year process, there's been a lot of evaluation to determine which projects should be prioritized. And we look at project readiness, as I said before. We also look at fiscal responsibility and smart planning throughout the whole county. So geographic equity, which is an important consideration, can't be the only factor when we are looking at prioritizing projects. But that's why we made sure that every subregion would receive a major project early in the queue. We, however, are not resting on our laurels. We are getting projects delivered now. Measure R was really a down payment on major projects. Measure M, if it was to be approved, can fully fund the majority of Measure R projects. We are also independently looking at project acceleration. We have a new office at Metro, our Office of Extraordinary Innovation. We just announced the receipt of more than 40 unsolicited proposals from the private sector with ideas on how to further advance major capital projects. And of course, a lot is happening now. So just to wrap up, I wanted to highlight on 2 key elements of the measure. Anytime you talk about sales tax, it's important for the constituents to know about what type of independent oversight or accountability is built into the measure. We are leveraging a best practice, and the sales tax measure proposes convening a new independent taxpayer oversight committee. It would expand its membership to 7 instead of the 3 we have today. And they would be charged with convening a comprehensive assessment every 10 years with public input and providing recommendations to our board. They also would review funding that goes out to each city as well. Having said that, there is some flexibility built into the ordinance. We've heard from cities that may be concerned about our 3% local contribution element if you have a major capital project. We cite, again, the Foothill Gold Line Authority as a best practice for other cities in other subregions, that the 3% local contribution is really a flexible opportunity, whether it's in-kind contributions or actual cash, to really demonstrate a commitment to the development of a major project and recognizing the economic development that is generated by having a major capital station in your city. To close, we really see our transportation partners as all of you in making LA County a better place to live and commute. We hope you will join us on this journey of a better mobility in our region, and we've worked very hard, and with your help, we will improve the quality of life for every Angelino. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. We're approaching the conclusion, but I just wanted to ask you all, I mean, we've talked about getting to the finish line. We obviously can see that the plans and the design are underway to get Phase 2B moving, and we've seen this funding plan. What I'm going to ask right now is, what are your views on a Plan B? Is there a Plan B if Measure M is not approved in November, and how good is it?
It's not very good. You know, when you develop a project of this size, you have to make some assumptions. And with this project, we looked, working with Metro over the last couple of years, looking ahead and going through this process that was started just over 2 years ago. We all got behind this measure as the most logical way that these projects are going to get built. When you talk about Plan B, we look at the federal government. The federal pot of money is so small. The FTA budget is so small for projects of major significance in any of these regions. We would probably be at least 30 years out if we were to go after federal dollars, large-scale federal dollars. We always thought about cap and trade potentially for this project. And as you know, the last cap and trade sales were minuscule, and those funds are probably not going to be out there this round. So from our perspective, this measure is the only likely way the project's going to get built. I think long term, if we looked out, if this wasn't available to us, we would look at cap and trade. I believe that market will rebound, and we would be able to coordinate. Because this project is so significant to the region, we would be able to coordinate you know, a very large grant from cap and trade, multi-year grant.
Stephanie, you heard Habib's answer. Obviously, today, the Gold Line extension is a high priority at Metro, but do you agree with the assessment on the timing?
Yes, I do. I really think that there has not been a viable Plan B, and that's why LA County residents have resorted to taxing themselves locally. That's how we've been able to deliver our major capital projects, both transit and highway, to date, because unfortunately the state has not been able to meet their kind of role in the partnership as a funding partner. As many of you know, especially if you represent cities, not even their share of local streets and roads has been returned back to the cities. It's been very difficult to rely on the federal government, and what we actually have seen is with our local sales tax dollars, we've been able to be very competitive at the national stage and be able to attract those. But without a local source, it's been very, very difficult.
So while we have opportunities then to leverage state and federal dollars, having them as a primary funding source, you're saying is very difficult.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other thoughts among the three of you, or should we open it up to questions? Any questions of this panel? Yes.
Thank you, John. Has there been any polling to see the likelihood of the Measure M passing next month?
Stephanie, you want to handle that on polling?
Sure, I can handle. In late May, early June of this year, we did some public polling, and the results were positive. They were above 70% across the county. We also have information by each subregion. Since that time, since our board took its formal action, though, in June of this year, then any future polling has been being done by the campaign, the privately funded campaign.
Yes.
And what percentage of funding is going to be available for operations? The Measure M funding.
Okay.
Sure. So for bus and rail operations, there's 20%. And then there's an additional 5% that is just for Metro rail operations. So a total of 25% of the measure.
Hi, Debbie Parada here, Ontario City Council person. Habib, what would be your best guess on what it would take to get from Montclair to the Ontario airport?
Other than prayers, you talking about funding?
Money, money-wise, how much?
Well, money and time. It's probably, from this point in time, it's probably about 25 years to get to Ontario Airport. If we started today and there was cooperation from everyone, that means you'd probably have, I'm making up numbers, $120, $150 million of planning and design for over the next 20, 25 years. And then you'd probably need, at that point, $1.5 billion, $2 billion to go that extra 6 or 7 miles from Montclair to Ontario. But every day that we don't start looking in that direction and making commitments to that, that 25 years is going to go longer and longer and longer.
Thank you.
So the distance from Azusa to Ontario is much further than Montclair to Ontario. And I think we've seen that with each step that we build, we get closer. But Stephanie, there are plans as well to enhance connections to LAX through Major M. Is that correct?
Yes. One of the projects listed is to actually finally finish the connection from our light rail system directly to LAX and in partnership with the airport.
So a separate project, but I think there is an increased recognition and focus on connecting rail to our airports. Other questions?
While I love sitting in traffic and listening to KNX radio, especially the financial report, it's just fabulous. I would love to sit on the Gold Line and read the Tribune. So when can I board the Gold Line in Glendora? What are you guesstimating that timeline is?
As I recall, the plan says under Measure M, it's one of the earliest projects to start, and it would open by 2025 is what I see. And I do recall, too, when you sat in the car and listened to the top 40, now you can listen to a whole symphony. So things have definitely changed. Yes?
One of the frustrations the public has with these sort of projects is the length. So I've just put out for you to think about, maybe you should try to expedite the construction and go into like at least a 2-shift construction instead of a one shift. They move over into 2 shifts so that the construction is expedited. It creates more work and then it shortens out this timeline. Because when you say 25 years to get to Ontario Airport, people's eyes go like, most of us aren't going to be around.
A couple things come to mind. I started working on Gold Line to Azusa 25 years ago, so some of us will be around, so I'll say that. But I would also say that we're a built-out county. I think next to Honolulu, we're the most dense county with very little open space. So while we do try and take advantage of accelerated construction schedules when we can, we often run into concerns with neighborhood impacts in the communities where we build. So many times when these communities are disrupted, they talk to their mayors and council members and the staff members, and it becomes very difficult. So a lot of times we're dealing with very heavy construction, a lot of boring and drilling and pounding, and it becomes difficult. So when it can be done, we do it, but I think there are other times where we have constraints just from people joining the right-of-way. Other questions? Yes?
Chris, you said that you're advancing plans at 30%. What are the advantages of doing that, and for the elements you've advanced beyond that line?
Well, the aggregate plan set will probably be around 30%, but we look at each individual discipline of the project and we decide which elements we want to advance. Some are more critical to the project. It is a design-build project, so you want to guide the design builder to build the exact thing that you want for certain elements, like the stations, for example. They're very critical with the architecture and the look, and so we want to advance that to a higher level than other elements of the project. The grade crossings are also another element that we want to advance to a high level to make sure that the city is in agreement with the geometry and the limits of construction and the timing of the traffic signals and the location of everything. So we learned from the previous project that those elements need to be advanced a little bit further just to ensure we get what we want at the end of the project.
One more question? Yes.
Good morning, I'm Tony Ramos, the city manager here in Claremont. Seeing how this project is so important, especially to those of us here in the Eastern San Gabriel Valley, what else can our stakeholders and us cities do to make sure that this project is even more successful?
They've got all the expertise here, but I'm going to say the first thing from a political standpoint is Measure M is essential. So talk to your friends, talk to your enemies, talk to your casual acquaintances if they live in Los Angeles County, and tell them to read the ballot and be ready to vote on November 8th. That's the key step, I think, from a financial standpoint. Other readiness tips for cities along 2B?
No, I think, we permitting and all those issues, we have a good working relationship with the cities. The previous phase of the project, I think we did an excellent job making sure that, again, that we're not surprising anyone with this project. They've been part of this, the Phase 2B cities, for the last 2.5 years. They know exactly where the stations are, the entrances, the exits. We've devoted $6 or $7 million into planning for pedestrian access and bike access to look ahead, look to the future. To make sure this fits within each of the city's confines and what the future planning is for the city. So you're never far from us. We always, we have regular meetings with you, and I think just understand that this is a cooperative working relationship, and this is not going to get built without that cooperation with each of the cities.
Well, we thank you for attending this panel. This concludes the current session. Let's have a hand for our panel, by the way.